You know, when it comes to business, strategy meetings often fall into one of two traps. They're either so high level and abstract that they're totally useless, or they get so bogged down in data that everyone is just paralyzed. Well, today, we're going to talk about a book that just cuts right through all that noise. It's called Playing to Win, and it's written by this incredible duo, A.G. Lafley, the former CEO of Procter & Gamble, and Roger Martin, the former dean of a top business school. And it's that mix, the real-world boardroom grit with the sharp academic thinking that makes their whole approach so darn powerful.
All right, so here's what we're going to cover in this explainer. First, we'll dive into what the authors call the strategy delusion. It's something that plagues most companies out there. Then we'll unpack the book's main idea, the 5 winning choices. After that, I'll put on my professor hat and give you a critique, the good and the bad. Then we'll look at the real-world stakes in a section called Winning versus Failing, with a couple of fantastic case studies. And we'll wrap it all up with a practical toolkit, stuff you can literally use tomorrow.
Okay, so first up, the strategy delusion. Here's the core problem the book points out. What most of us call strategy, well, it isn't strategy at all. It's usually just a wish list, or a budget, or maybe some vague mission statement. But real strategy, that's about something way harder. It's about making choices.
And that brings me to a question for you. And I'm serious, just pause and really think about this for a second. If I could see how you spend your time and your money, your calendar and your budget, would it be crystal clear what you've decided not to do? Because if the answer is no, you might be falling right into the trap this book is all about.
This right here is the key insight. When you fail to make choices, when you can't say no to some good ideas so you can focus on the great ones, it means you're just playing to play. You're showing up, you're participating, but you are not set up to actually win. And that, as we're about to see, is a recipe for failure.
So, how do you escape that wish list trap? Well, the book gives us a super clear and powerful antidote. It's a framework called the 5 winning choices.
At the very heart of this framework is a huge mental shift. Strategy isn't just about being in the game. It's about figuring out how you're going to win the game. This quote just nails it. It's not a suggestion. It's a demand for you to orient everything around victory, not just showing up.
So what is strategy, according to these guys? It's not that 100-page document you put on a shelf. It's not your fluffy vision statement. It's an integrated set of 5 specific choices. And the most important word on this slide is integrated. These aren't just 5 items on a checklist. They have to fit together. They have to work as one coherent machine. And here they are. The authors call this the Strategic Choice Cascade. I want you to think of it like a waterfall. The choice you make at the top, your big aspiration, literally flows down and constrains the next choice, and so on. It starts big and broad, and it gets more and more specific, right down to the nitty-gritty systems you need to make it all happen.
Let's make this real with P&G's own story. Their winning aspiration wasn't just, hey, let's sell more soap. No, it was to turn the Olay brand into a dominant market leader. Okay, so that choice led to the next one, where to play. They decided to focus on personal care, and that meant they had to decide where not to play. That's the hard part, right? They sold off huge brands like Pringles. Then, how to win. They chose to differentiate on being a premium product, not on being the cheapest. And to pull that off, what did they need? World-class capabilities in skin science. You see how that works? It's a chain of logic. Each choice builds on the one before it.
Okay, so I've got to put my professor hat on for a second. Is this framework perfect? I mean, does it work in every single situation? The truth is, while its strengths are huge, it's not without some weaknesses, especially when you think about the crazy fast-moving business world we live in today.
So its single greatest strength, in my opinion, is this thinking tool they call reverse engineering. Instead of a meeting where everyone is just fighting for their pet idea, you ask a different question. For your idea to actually work, what would have to be true about our customers, about the market, about our costs? This is a total game changer. It turns subjective arguments into hypotheses you can actually go out and test. But it does have a couple of weak spots. First, that top-down cascade can feel a bit too rigid and linear for, say, an agile startup that needs to pivot on a dime. And second, its DNA comes from the legendary strategist Michael Porter. His big idea was that you have to choose. You either win on low cost or you win by being different. But think about it. Platform companies today, like Amazon, they seem to do both, right? They offer huge selection and low prices. That kind of complicates that old-school binary choice.
But look, even with those critiques, this core idea of making hard choices is just as powerful as ever. And honestly, the best way to really get it is to see it in action. So let's look at the massive consequences of getting strategy right and getting it really, really wrong.
First, let's talk about a winner, Lego.
It's kind of hard to imagine now, but back in the early 2000s, Lego was on the brink of going bankrupt. Seriously. And why? Because they had completely lost their strategic focus. They forgot what made them Lego.
Lego was playing to play. They were chasing every shiny object, theme parks, video games, clothes, you name it. And in the process, they were watering down their brand. They were losing sight of the simple plastic brick, so their new CEO made a brutal but absolutely necessary choice about where to play. He said, "We will play only in toys that are about the construction system." That's it. He sold off the theme parks. He shut down the other stuff. Then he chose how to win. Not by being the cheapest toy, but by being the absolute best, most creative system out there, and then brilliantly layering on these incredible IP partnerships like Star Wars and Harry Potter. The lesson is just so clear. By narrowing their focus, by having the guts to say no, they became the most profitable toy company on the planet.
All right, now for the flip side of that coin. A company that became famous for its failure to choose. Back in 2006, a Yahoo executive wrote this memo that became legendary in Silicon Valley. It was called the Peanut Butter Manifesto.
The memo's big point was that Yahoo was spreading itself so thin across so many different projects, it was like spreading a tiny bit of peanut butter over a huge slice of bread. Nothing got enough resources to be truly great. They just refused to choose where to play. Were they a media company, a tech company, a search company? They tried to be all of them at the same time. And because they couldn't decide how to win in any one of those areas, they ended up losing in all of them to competitors who were laser-focused. Google crushed them in search. Facebook crushed them in social. They were spread too thin to win anywhere, and that led directly to that long, painful decline.
Okay, let's bring this all home. We've talked about the theory, the critique, the case studies. Now, how can you actually use these ideas? I want to give you 3 super practical tools you can take with you and apply right away.
First up is something called the can't-won't test. It's so simple. Just look at any strategy statement and ask yourself, what's the opposite? If the opposite is obviously stupid, then it's not a real choice, so it's not a real strategy. For example, we will be customer-centric. That's a bad strategy statement. Why? Because the opposite is we will ignore our customers, and no one would ever choose to do that. But what about we will focus on high-net-worth clients? Now that's a good strategy, because the opposite, serving the mass market, is a totally valid choice that another company, like Walmart, makes every single day.
So here they are, your 3 tools. Number 1, use that can't/won't test to call out fake strategies in your next meeting. Number 2, the next time an argument breaks out, just stop and ask, okay, for your idea to be the right one, what would have to be true? It's a brilliant way to turn a fight into a productive experiment. And number 3, always connect the boxes. If you say you're going to win somewhere new, you have to be brutally honest. Do we actually have the capabilities to do that? If you don't, your strategy isn't a strategy. It's a hallucination.
And really, if you take away just one thing, let it be this. Strategy isn't some big, scary, complex analysis. At its absolute core, strategy is about courage. It is the courage to say no, the courage to disappoint some people, to shut down some projects, to walk away from perfectly good opportunities so that you can throw all of your energy behind the very few that will actually let you win.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. Think about this framework, not just for your company, but for your own career. What is that one shiny object, that tempting side project, that interesting new market that is distracting you from your real core winning aspiration? Making that tough choice to say no to it might just be the most strategic move you make all year.